And what I wanted to talk to you about was something that came through in the full moon yesterday. It was a topic that came up a lot, and it was about outgrowing things. You know, and we often talk about, you know, outgrowing places, outgrowing like habits. You know, those of you that work out know this, right? If you outgrow a routine, the body doesn't change anymore. If you keep doing the same old thing, the body gets used to it, and then it doesn't change, it doesn't grow. And that's what you really want when you're working out, right? You want to tap into other things. So our psyches and our consciousnesses are exactly the same. And, you know, you outgrow styles, you outgrow things that you used to wear and enjoy wearing and you just don't anymore. You outgrow maybe even music that you used to listen to. So, but what we're going to be talking today is outgrowing suffering. Yeah. Outgrowing suffering. Outgrowing the story of our suffering. And we all know, we all see it, we all have, you know, family members, we all have friends that we have watched go through certain things, or maybe even yourself, but you were just holding on to the pain, holding on to the condition, holding on to the manifestation of a symptom that was telling you to leave your job, right? It was telling you to leave this boss that maybe didn't acknowledge you, right? You're outgrowing the suffering of not being seen. You know, you were outgrowing the suffering of being dumped upon and, you know, picking up everybody else's slack. You outgrow sometimes being, you know, in the job, especially in the 90s, people were very, very good at leaving jobs after 2-3 years. Once they got the experience and they moved on to the next job for a newer experience. But I've seen in the last 10 years, people stay in things just too long. It's not developing them anymore. They're comfortable. They're actually too comfortable. And all the signs are there to leave. But, you know, they haven't outgrown the suffering yet of being overlooked or not getting the promotion. Right? Everything's like getting dangled in front of them. And also even like working with a lot of artists, like outgrowing the suffering of paying your dues, outgrowing the suffering of, you know, I'm nearly there, I'm invested in the struggle because I like it. I like to talk about my struggle. And that, when you get bored of that, is when it all starts to happen. When you're like, yeah, I want to be there already. I don't care how scary it is or what I need to deal with. I'm done, you know? And outgrowing the suffering of even bad relationships. You know, bad relationships can, it's just not the right time, it's just not the right time, it's just not the right time. And sometimes there is no good time. And sometimes those relationships are not personal relationships, you know, partner relationships. Sometimes it can be friends, you know, sometimes it can be colleagues, sometimes it can be realizing the suffering of being around people that don't want the best for you. You know, being around the suffering of always kind of dimming yourself down to be more palatable or not set someone off in the group that can't handle that you achieved X, Y, and Z. So when you start to kind of outgrow that, you start to open up to a different frequency, right? You start to kind of outgrow the suffrage, the suffering of your predicament, the suffering of your, well, that always happens to me. What part of it is you being attached to the suffering? So that it perpetuates the same, you know, condition, the same conditions, the same choice for you to choose certain things that are always going to be almost there but never really hitting, right? And what I wanted to kind of finish with today is something that you probably all heard, but I want us to, it's so good, you know, because it's about this outgrowing the suffering. And it's, you know, once you heal, once you really, really heal, you know, my focus isn't just in healing. That's my secondary thing. You know, my primary is to pause and enjoy. What did you come here to enjoy? Why did you not go after it? Oh, you were scared, you were frightened, you were intimidated, you had an inferiority complex. Let's look at that and get you back on track. Because all this other stuff is a manifestation of you not being on your designated path, even if it scares you. That's part of life's adventure, right? To overcome and to remove the suffering of being on the path that you want, right? Why is it so difficult? You know, you want to enjoy what you're doing. So once you heal, you know, you really do stop bleeding on people that didn't cut you. Because what happens is when you don't heal those parts of yourself of what someone did to me, what someone is doing to me, what my individual experience is, we start to kind of cut people around us that are sometimes have been sent to help, or it's opportunities that show up that sometimes activate the gremlin, right? I see it a lot in the arts and creativity when people come across, they actually magnetize, you know, doing this work, the people that they really want to work with, but then that little goblin, right, the suffrage, this is too good to be true, has to cut the deal, you know, cut them out, cut them and bleed over them because of this unhealed part of yourself, of whatever happened. And when you heal, you stop doing that. And it's so that you can live in more joy. That's why we heal. Once you grow, you stop trying to shrink yourself for places that you've outgrown. Right? Once you grow, you kind of stop shrinking yourself, you know, for those places that you've outgrown. You stop making excuses, you stop apologizing to people, right? You've outgrown it, move on. You know, we're here to evolve and have experiences. We can still be around people, but if you find that you're shrinking yourself, and especially I think sometimes those of you that have got siblings and, you know, sibling rivalry, and, you know, what people don't realize, it's not just sometimes your parents that form your worldview, it can sometimes be your siblings. And a lot of people that I work with have to look at certain ways that they shrink themselves to be more palatable to siblings. And they don't like you anymore for shrinking. Actually, they don't like you because they know it's an act. So really kind of look at that outgrowing apologizing, outgrowing making excuses for making decisions that you've made consciously, and sometimes risks that you've taken that other people around you haven't taken. And really also, once you kind of know your worth and value, you know, again, it's this shrinking. You stop offering discounts. And I'm not talking about monetary discounts, but the discount that is, you know, the cheap version of you. The toned down version of you. The generic version of you. So I want you to think about that, like that, you know, once you kind of know your worth and value, you know, you really have to start to kind of cherish that. And especially coming into this system of AI, right? Because it really is about originality. And valuing your point of view of originality. You know, if we all wrote a book, right, about our experience of something, you know, and say it's the same thing. Say it was the same party that we went to, we would all have different points of view, and that's the beauty of us all. We all have different experiences, we all have different lenses, and we also have different skills and talents. Some of you are singers, some of you are bakers, some of you are organizers. You know, we all come at it differently, and that's why we're so unique. But when you start to discount yourself, you start to bring in the thieves. You start to bring in the stealers, the mimickers, the parrots, that want to be you in the space that you're not taking. And there's a lot of parrots, and there's a lot of mimickers. But that only comes into play if you don't fully show up as yourself. Because you're giving us the discounted version. So that's all. That's what came through the last 24 hours. I will do more of these over the summer. I think they'll be fun for us to tap into, because there's a lot going on. And you know what? I work in a very unique space. I'm not in the place of suffrage that many people need to go into in therapy, say. You know, and there's a great, I mean, I think therapy is amazing for people. It's great for unpacking. It's great for zooming out and zooming in and really kind of looking. But, and I work with a lot of therapists, but for me, it's the place of the people that come to me are like the people that want that, okay, right, I'm done. I'm bored. I want out of this. I need help. I need to go to that emotion. I need to go to that raw emotion. I'm done with this thing haunting me or being over my head like a cloud. I need to go. And some people know what it is. Some people, we unpack it together. Some people are know exactly what it is, because so many people have done so much great work on themselves of really doing that self-audit. And I think you need to do that self-audit to really go to the places that you need to go to neutralize them and collapse them and be free of them. But you also need that vision of the future. Or you're constantly in this Ferris wheel of healing. You're healing so that you can be living your life of joy. You're healing so that you can be free. You're healing so that you're healed. You're healing so that you can do things, right? that you normally would have put aside, or you would have been shrinking, or you would have made excuses or apologized for having these huge ideas, whatever it is. So yeah, that's what kind of came through, of outgrowing the suffering. And yeah, good to see you all. It was a very impromptu discussion, and I'll do more of them for the summer of 2025. Take care. Bye.